Hello everybody and welcome to a new Victoria Miniatures painting series. This one is going to cover the Broolians. In this first episode we want to do a color test figure and we want to match this first figure right here. See, we've got some tattoos on the arm, a little bit of rust, maybe even some chipping on the armor. Another simple tattoo over here. We've got the use of some of the metal medium for metallics. We have lots of stuff going on with skin tone here. All kinds of greens in the skin tone. Even though it's mostly brown, you can see there's even some purples in there. So we're going to talk about balancing all those different elements on our color test. I'm even going to talk about my homemade grass tufts at the very end here. We'll use the usual Reaper paints, and you're going to see a lot of these. You're going to see pretty much the whole set of them: gray, brown, red, and green. When we get to the rest of the unit, you're really going to see these take a major role. But we also have some secret weapon paints here. They're weathering paints, but I just use them as regular paints too. These are two that I use a lot. I actually use these a lot on tanks. Engine grime. We've got verdigris, dark green. We got a verdigris, pale green. Also have a whole bunch of different rust colors. There's red rust, orange rust, yellow rust. I think this is the red rust. There's old rust. Some of those might also show up. We've even got some browns. I think this is caked dirt. There's also weathered wood, old wood. And then we've got the usual off-whites that we like to use from Reaper. Again, this is Maiden Flesh, Maggot White. This is just a little more of a bluish white. And this is more of a reddish orange white, if you want to call it that. So these are the things we use to lighten up our colors. This is really what we use for the majority of highlights. Not using just a plain old dead white, because that's where you tend to get that chalkiness. We also have, as usual, some of our magic sponges here. Just makeup sponges, dirt cheap on Amazon. We won't use it so much on this first color test figure because we're just working on one, but when we're working on the rest of the unit, you'll definitely see a bunch more of those. Last but not least, we have our brushes, and these are the number 8 round craft brushes. You see a huge difference in the two. This one is a little more pristine, so it's got that tip on it, but this one has a little more wear and tear. When we wet it down and feather it out, you've got that nifty custom-made filbert brush. I'd just say, well, that's a big old giant, but well, look at that. All of a sudden now, you have the same edge, but you get the advantage of something that's 2.5 times as long as a filbert brush. It has a softer rim on it, so we can use it for blending things. We can use it for feathering lighter colors on. A lot of uses for these basically homemade filbert brushes. And they are definitely not expensive, as you can see here. That's for a pack of 12. I actually just got some more of these online. You don't have to necessarily go to Hobby Lobby to get them. They're just synthetic number 8 round watercolor brushes. That's all they are. Very simple. These end up taking the beating, so that when you do want to use a Series 7, whatever, Winsor Newton, you use it for the real fine details that you want, instead of beating it up. Just dropping in initial colors here. Speaking of those colors, we are going to throw those out on the palette, and we're going to get this party started. So we're back, and before we get started with the painting process, just want to show you where the Broolians are on the website. So here we go. They're focused more on close combat, as you can see, close combat squad. But when you look at the different options and pieces, you can see there are still some gun options there. You can also combine these with other sets they're designed to. You can see they're broken down into torsos, heads, legs. Kind of the old school way, instead of more like the 1/48 scale model kits. You can see an example here. This is another squad where I mixed and matched a lot of different things. To make that command squad, you see here, there are a lot of different arms, heads, legs that I matched together to be able to make this specific set of guys. So that is definitely the advantage of the Victoria miniatures, is you can still kind of go old school and matching up parts that you need. Now, getting down to the palette here, we have that collection of liner paints. We have brown liner, red liner, green liner. This one's blue, that one's sepia. And again, when I get into the unit painting as a whole, you'll see even more of this at play. So we're going to get some water out here because we're doing washes. Now, you're going to see more lines on the palette camera there because this is a new light and it's very powerful. So there's not much we can do about that. So I'm going to get in here and you'll see me do this a lot. So we've got the red liner and the green liner. I'm going to mix those together, and you say, why are you doing that? For folks that are familiar with these, you know that red and green together make brown. What's the primary color of these guys? Well, it's brown. But here, as I mix these together, you see when I remove some of these early glazes, what'll happen? So see, now we get a whole different shade of, just instead of brown liner alone, we almost get something that's a little more gray. But now I can grab a little more red. I can even grab a little bit of sepia tone in. I'll throw a little bit of water in there. So see, again, changing that color along the way. Sorry, that's super dry in here. We're in the way negative temperature things, and that's just going to happen to my voice, so I apologize for that. You can throw in some brown here. This is the brown liner, so I can even add some liner and water in now. Hit that. All we're trying to do is take advantage of some of that pre-shading that we did, and even that was really simple. There's nothing more than some Badger Stynylrez primer. I airbrushed it on. If you don't have an airbrush, no big deal. I used to brush that stuff on for years, long before I ever had an airbrush. As I work my way down, let's go with even more of the red and brown together here. So I can add water even after I've thrown some of the liners on there. I know that's going to be really weird for some folks, so maybe you just mix up the water in your palette here first before you apply it. It's just, hey, I'm used to it. When you're doing army painting like this, you want to move at a decent pace. So these, remember, have a little greenish tint to them, so guess what? We're going to throw a little bit of green in there too. That's the green liner. And then I'll go back to some of the brown. And we're going to, again, water that down just a touch. And let's hit a little more of the red here. I'm going to leave the gun and the base for the time being because while this is still wet, what do I want to do? I'm going to take one of these sponges here. Start to take away some of the extra. Look at that. Look at how much of that goes away. But as it goes away, you'll see, like here, that's going to have more of a greenish tint to it than other spots because guess what? The color that was predominantly there was green liner. So look at how much paint. It's almost like we're doing a charcoal drawing here where you put a bunch of charcoal on there, then you take your kneaded eraser and then you remove some. And why are we doing that? We're just trying to create a little extra shading. This is one of the reasons why I left the gun separate, so you can see how much more shading there is on the body. Let's say there's a place we can't reach with the sponge, or it's an area that's a little more detailed. We want a little more precision. That's what these guys are for. You can see how much is being removed. Like so. Look at that. What I do is I'll grab another one that's set up for the unit painting thing, and after we get all of this with these initial glazes and stuff, I'll take that one and I'll show you just the difference that makes. Now, let's say you have a shape that's not right, or you got a sponge that's getting all dirty. Well, a scissors, cut that up. We have a new shape that can get down into those crevices there. So I used to just I would run through an entire bag of these things really fast because, well, I would just use the one side and the other corner and say, well, that's full of paint, can't do anything with that. Then realize, no, that's probably, if I cut that, I might be able to get more use out of it. So blue liner, brown liner, blue and brown together essentially make black. We'll water that down. Now we're going to hit the las gun, or maybe not a las gun because there's a magazine on it. Who knows? So we're just making this have a little bit of, again, the pre-shading nice and dark, because guess what? We're going to go over the top of it with the metallic medium mixed in. So just like before, we're going to take this, take some away, but we leave enough behind to get some definition there. Turn it over, do the same thing on the other side. And then the base, I want to get some mud. So here, let's take the brown and the sepia liner together. We'll water that down, throw a little bit of red. And down we go into the base here. I didn't do a special basing episode on this because everything's got to be real simple rock and gravel. If I had done something more elaborate, I would have showed you, but I think everybody knows how to do rock and gravel. And while I got it here, I'm even just going to throw this on the base. Now I have to do a different color than my usual black. They have to be that sort of tannish color. That's when you do things as commission or whatever, you lose, a lot of times you lose those color choices. You have to do whatever matches what's already there. So see, we're starting to get these rocks to come back out, and if we wanted to be more precise again, we just use this sponge, get down in there. Now all of a sudden those rocks show up. We're going to do some more painting on that afterwards, but even now at this stage, we already have a little more in the way of lights and darks than, let's say, one. Like so. So there's the two of them together. You can see we have some darks in there, but there's also a little more color. I can see some more bluish tones here, some more greenish tones in other places, and that's the kind of stuff that we're going to play off of as I bring back this. So again, we have more green in some places. This almost has more of an orange look to it. Now, you can let that dry and keep going. I actually like to start painting on that with the lighter colors once, while the initial glazes are still wet. Let's play around with that. Here, let's throw some other stuff out here. So this is that verdigris dark green. Well, let's just throw out two basic things here. Let's throw out a little bit of that maiden flash. That's our off-white, remember. Here's our maggot white, which is our blue off-white. And maybe I throw in, here's that orange rust. Let's try some of that. Yeah, right there. Now, when bottles clog, I've got things like this little push pan. Try and push through the clog and give that a little bit of a shake there, and out it comes. So you're gonna now utilize our craft brush here, get him up here. I'll move this up just a tad. And what we're going to do is take some of our different liner paints here and cut them with some lighter colors. So you can see this is sort of an orangey red here. Let's get some more of that red liner out there. Just want to show you how I can play around with that. Here we go. So red liner. Can't take some of that Maiden Flash. So see we have kind of a grayish red. Can warm that up with a little bit of the yellow rust. You can see I'm using a little bit of water at this stage because I want it to flow. And now that's more of a grayish brown skin tone. And that's one of the reasons why I thought I'd show you this as an army where we're not going to do the same exact brown on every single Beastman. That would be sort of boring. It would, even in a regular, say, more human squad of guard doing the same exact color skin tone on everybody, that can also get a little boring. So again, I'm just going to let some of that mix down into the already wet color there. I'm going to hit this other arm. And when you're doing a whole unit, sometimes you don't really get to do the wet blending because, well, color's kind of drying as you move around the unit. That's just sort of what happens sometimes. This has a little more yellow in it. Gets a little bit lighter, but it's nowhere near a highlight. Here I've got this white right here. Let's look at how dark that is. But yet on here, that color looks light. It's not. We're barely at a middle tone yet. So keep that in mind also as you're working your way through that unit, that you don't want to accelerate to those extreme highlights right off the bat. Most people, when they think about it, they say, well, you kind of work from the middle to the dark and then back to the light again. That's fairly reasonable description there. Let's see, look at, as we add this, starts to get a little bit lighter, but all of your initial shadows are still in place there. And like I said, if you're more comfortable with this drying in between, but that's what you do. Now this is even more of a yellowish orange type color here. And you can go in here, start to work on some of these muscles. Now, we talk about the currency of time over and over again. How much time does it take to do something on, well, let's say this color test figure? If it takes 10 minutes to do something on that figure, well, I have 20 of these to do. We're doing 10 in the video because, well, otherwise it would be twice as long series. You don't necessarily need that. You have to multiply that 10 minutes times 20, and that can add up to a lot of minutes. So you have to say to yourself, is it worth it? This effect, this whatever that takes X amount of time, is it worth it doing it 10, 20, 30, 50 times? And this is as light as I'm going to go. I'm just trying to get a little separation here on things like the fingers from the stock and everything else. So we're just going to throw a couple of these up here because we want to get some of those greens in there. That's what we're going to play with next. And see how this, we're not doing 20, 30 different layers of skin tone. We kind of did it all at once. This, to me, well, I'd never get all of these things finished if I was just endlessly taking, okay, here's one step lighter, here's one step lighter, Here's one step lighter. Just take forever, all of those layers. That's just how it is. For better or for worse, that's kind of how it is. And while I have this, guess what? I'm just going to throw a few lights down here on my rocks. Talked about green. Now we got that verdigris green that looks, again, so dark on the palette. And look at how light it is here. So this is on those armor plates. And up here on his torso, doing the same thing. But because I've got those darks already down in the shadows, I don't have to work as hard. You're trying to make this thing easier, not more difficult. Because, okay, for me it's obviously work, but for you guys it's supposed to be fun. It's supposed to be your hobby, the thing that you like to do. And if it's just a chore, well, you're not going to enjoy it as much. Definitely won't enjoy it as much, and you're just going to find other things to do, and that army's never going to get painted. And I've seen just how upset people can get kind of with themselves when they say, gee, I wanted to paint that army and it doesn't get painted, and then they sort of beat themselves up over it. And we don't want that. Now I have to choose, do I want a green cloth? I made this more of a grayish brown. Alright, we can do that. We've done plenty of that already. I'm going to take some of that brown liner, mix it in with the Maiden Flesh. It's going to give us a grayish brown. That's going to go in here. Try to make sure you can see it. But as always, look at how dark that actually is. But it looks like a light. We got some of this on the back here. We also got backpacks to deal with. Now we have that green. And what we're going to do is take some of that green, just water it down a touch, and get that where you can see it. And we're going to throw a pinch of that, just like a cooking show. We're throwing a pinch of green into the skin tone here. Why? Because there's plenty of green in other areas. Makes sense that it would not necessarily reflect green like, say, metal would, but you are what you wear. When you look at yourself in the mirror, if you're wearing a hot pink t-shirt, you got a hot pink face, or at least a chin. If you're wearing lime green, same thing. So it makes sense to just incorporate a touch of that green into some of those shadow areas. And you can see how that was not a big deal. Didn't have to work super hard at that. Here, I'm going to take the red liner, some of the yellow rust. It's a little more of an orangey type color there. I'll throw some of that on here, and on the spats that they're still wearing, even though they're Beastmen. So that's a fashion choice. Let's get a little bit of that on his blade here. Yeah, maybe I'll throw a little hint of that up here on the horns. And you can see I tried to leave the horns lighter there, darker down there. The hooves, well, they're just going to be, I'm going to go with more of that grayish, typical kind of dark hoof color here. So we got the blue liner, brown liner together. And especially this one here, where it's up in the air, and it's basically a glaze. So I'll go right over the top of that. This hoof, not going to see it very much. It's definitely sort of buried there in the rocks and gravel. We're going to darken this down end of the muzzle here. And did not take long, did it, to really establish not just lights and darks, but now we've got some ideas when it comes to color. And just throw in some more darks in there. And again, all of this, you can just throw some shadows in the eyes. We can throw some dark on the ends of the horns, because remember, I wanted each of these to be a little different. So maybe some of them we go dark here, out to light. We reverse things a little bit in some cases. So again, just going even deeper with shadows in some areas, because that's never a bad thing. But these shadows have a little bit of color variation to them. Now, I would normally just keep blasting away at this, right? But what we'll do is we're gonna only just throw a little bit more stuff on here. And just want to start to think about what color some of these packs are. They are lighter, but I talked about midtones. That's what we're going to get to next. There you go. Just see a little bit of that. It's still wet, but that's that same craft brush. Remember the nasty old number 8 round craft brush? Look, I'm just going to take some paint out my hand here, throw it on there, because I can do that. And you can too. Now up here on the horns, that's not really the most smooth transition in the world there. We're not really worried about super smooth transitions at this point. We just don't want real stark differences. Want it to be a little more gradual, like that. And we're pretty well set now on our darks, so we are ready. We're ready to get into some midtones. There we are. Just stay tuned. We're going to start to lighten this guy up a bit. So we're talking about making things lighter here. Yeah, the only thing I really added to the palette at this point was some of the verdigris light green, because there is a touch of that in his armor here. Alright, and actually, while I'm thinking about it, I'm just gonna toss out a little clear purple here. Another one of the Reaper colors. We'll just toss that over there, just to have it out there. Let's get in with there's our verdigris green, and I'm going to toss just a little bit of that lighter verdigris green. Again, you could use a smaller brush for this. You don't have to use the number 8 round craft brushes to do stuff like this. I'm not trying to lay down a whole bunch of laws here and rules and you gotta do it this way. This is how you gotta do it. It's just some ideas, especially when it comes to army painting, saving your brushes, saving on cost. It's a lot of different elements that go into this. You know, you may not be so comfortable with what to some folks probably looks like a gigantic house brush by comparison to what they're used to. Maybe you only use this for that very first stage, where all we did was glaze things, and we're really just smashing that brush down in the crevices. Maybe that's all you use it for. So we just added a little more of that lighter green, and you can see that I focus more of those lights towards the center of that, not the edges, because it's supposed to be round. Let's see. See how it's basically round like this dead paint jar that I'm using to hold it. So you wouldn't have, these should be the shadow areas, not this. So I know folks are into the edge lighting thing, especially when it comes to the army painting. Well, okay, again, this here, where's the light got to be? It's got to be up here. Has to be up here because that's just the part that's going to catch more light just by virtue of its shape. And it's not a complicated thing to see. It's not too hard to just drop a little bit of paint right in there. You know, that is not too hard at all, even with the big old brush. Now I don't want to get too much into adding lights and lights and lights. We're going to throw a little bit of the maiden flesh in here. Tiny touch of it. Get this where you can see it now. And I think the other thing you guys are going to probably go, well, wait a second, that paint's not exactly dry. No, it's not. I'm used to wet blending and such. Now there's another little sneaky thing here too. If this is yours, and you know you're going to be adding a lot of either rust or maybe mud effects or dirt effects or a lot of chipping. Now, see, you don't have to worry about super smooth blending things. It's like a vehicle. Oh man, around that door I just didn't get that shaded very well. Oh my goodness, there's going to be lots of chipping and rust over there. So that's, or mud or blood effects, something like that. So you use them to tell a story, but you can also use them to help you out a little bit there too. Why not? So that's as far as we'll go with the green. So we have that purple liner. Let's play with that for a little bit here. Now we're not going to certainly use it as some kind of pure bright purple. Okay. Purple and green makes gray, but it's a little different color gray, and this is where we had a lot of the purples and magentas and that kind of thing. So let's throw a touch of that in here. Now it may not even show up all that much. On camera you might say, I don't really see that. That's the, what do you want to call it, the color surprise of an army, where from, what would you say, 4 feet away, this is pretty much what they'll be able to see. From 2 feet away, this is what they'll be able to see. But some of you are looking to advance your painting scores. As a person who has had to judge many army painting things, what's going to happen is that those judges, when it really comes time to separate the winners from those that are not going to be selected, they're going to pick up each individual miniature, and they're going to turn it upside down, and they're going to look to see, well, how does it look at a foot away, 6 inches away? And I've seen a lot of people, now they get disappointed because in that last phase there, that's something that looked so great initially from a distance. The closer you get, the less of those color surprises that I talk about like this here. Guess what we're doing? See right here, we're adding some purple there. We're adding some grayish purple right here. Look at that, it's playing right against the green. When they see that from a distance, guess what? It's just going to register as brown. I'm just going to crank up my brightness a little bit here so you can see that. And speaking of which, here, this is something I like to do. So we're going to take this color intensity. Now, you can see there's some greens and blues there, right? And if I turn that color intensity down, zoom, all the way like that, guess what? We still have our lights and shadows. But when it comes back up again, now you see that little hint of green. Maybe we even get a little more intense with, see, a little bit lighter purple here. Let's go right here. So if it's too light, we can always knock it down. This is the other thing I'm going to do is Remember that filbert brush, so I just flattened it out. And this means I can spread that around a little bit more. So again, we're completely changing the whole feel of this. We got the green, the purple against each other before we get too absorbed in greens and purples. Let's get a little bit of orange in here for that to play against. And here we go. So again, we're adding another type of contrast. It's not just light versus dark. We have warm versus cool. What's warm versus cool? Orange is warm, blue is cool. That's the simplest version of it, I guess. We want to call it that. But then there's also, and this is the one that's usually the hardest for people to really get a hold of, and that's you have a real saturated bright color, like some kind of hot pink color or bright red, but then maybe you have a more brownish red where there's some green in there. Green and red are opposites. They make brown. Other things make brown too. You can orange and blue will do the same thing. But now what happens is you have a color that is nowhere near as pure, and it starts to seem more grayish. So I can't see. Yeah, it looks like he has two of his bottom teeth here. So we'll go 1, we'll go 2. Now let's give him some eyes at this point just to throw that in there. Some eyebrows for him. You can see we're starting to work a little bit lighter here. It's starting to make a difference. Go back into my orangey type colors, and yeah, that's a word. I'm going to say it's a word, orangey. Just to get a little more oomph on the knee. I just did there. So yeah, threw myself some of the. I'm going to see if I can. I was going to zoom in a bit more for you there. Going to get some of that on his face also, right up here. Because we've been adding a lot of grayish type colors. We need something that's a little bit more pure. And see how that orange is next to the purple there. The values are about the same. If I was to do that little thing again with cranking down the saturation, you wouldn't really see that difference there. Here, let's get some of this on. There's a few straps that you really can't see too well, so we're just going to throw that on there. See, we're changing the color of that blade. Throw some of this on the spats down here. If these were mine, I'd probably do mud spatters on the legs. It's a simple thing to add, and it adds a lot to these foot soldiers. Really makes them look like foot sloggers, for one thing. And it just lends more of a sense of scale to them. So we've added that little touch orange here. And we still got some of that brown liner here. I'm going to take some of this green, mix it with the brown right here, and get some of the cloth here. Take that maiden flesh and add some of that to it. So now it's a much lighter gray. Again, I look at my pack there, and you can see how much lighter we can go. Even on the cloth, there's plenty of light that we can add to this. And right there, we add a little bit. We add some to this part of his pack, even a little bit on the spats here. We've got the cloth, which I don't want to lighten this too much because I'd almost lose a little bit of contrast with the pack there, so I'll just leave that go. This is in shadow really, so let's not make that too light. That was another thing that when I first started doing miniatures, I had a tendency to just highlight individual elements as if they were all on their own, like there was nothing else around them. And then I started to realize, no, I don't want to be doing that. I have to follow, if the light's coming from above, well, how in the world did all that light get down underneath the gun, underneath his arms to highlight that area? It makes no sense. So we're going to lighten up the pack a little bit more here. Like that. And again, the spat that's up here, and we've also got his cigarette here. And I might even, just for the heck of it, well, actually there's a little, I'm going to say that's a laser rangefinder there. So I might go in there and get myself some of the fluorescent paint, mess with some of that there too. Horns. So again, this is where I want it to be a little bit lighter and then fade out to dark. I'm going to do this one. Like that. Can always tone it down. You can glaze over the top of it, whatever the need may be. Again, leaving the las gun, las rifle for the time being, because that's going to be hit with our metal medium. You've seen that on some previous videos too. So we're just doing the handle. And then you can see I'm not getting in this any kind of super light colors just yet. And actually a little bit of that purple in here because I saw some in the pack that I had done on that sample figure. I'm going to do some right here. And when people look at this, they won't look at it and say, wow, he must have taken purple right there. They'll just see a mid-tone or something that sort of complements the green, complements the skin color. That, as you've heard me say many times, if you watch these videos a lot, you've heard me over and over again talking about saving those brightest highlights for the end. We're still sort of in the middle here. That's why we're just going to hang on to that particular ace in the hole. So now, getting a whole lot closer to that, but you can see we have not dived into those brightest highlights yet. Again, it's about mid-tones. But while I'm here, why not throw a little bit of light color on these rocks. This is another way to keep that line moving more rapidly, is you have a color and you say, oh, you know what, that'll work there too. Why don't I just get that too while I have this color on the brush, instead of stopping, mixing a whole new color, going back in there and just, okay, yeah, I can hit that too while I'm over here. When you run errands, you don't arrange your errands so that you only go to one store and then go back home and then go back to another store. That's sort of the approach that we're doing here with the figures, and it'll show up a lot more when we get to the rest of the unit for sure. No doubt about that. So here we're going to throw a little bit of a lighter color there, a little bit there. Spats here just need a little more variation. We'll do that. Now we'll go back to our green. We have some of that verdigris light green. This is just taking some of that kind of a yellowy orange mix there. And I'm just going to throw a few more lights in some places. Again, not the final highlight of highlights, but something that brightens it up a little bit. Here, I'm going right down that center of that again. Same thing here on this side, down the center. That's what is going to make it go turn like that. Now let's see what color. So, okay, when I do the rust, that's when I'm going to do some of the more reddish tones on. See what we got there on the straps of that. So face-wise, we can throw a few more lights on here too. Here, let's work our way around the cheekbones and the lips, that sort of thing. Again, highlight on the cheekbones there. Let's say you wanted to give them the pink ears. Now we can do that a couple different ways. Let's see what happens if we take that red rust, mix it with some of our Maiden Flesh, and throw that in the ears. Not too much. Don't want to lighten them all the way because, well, they're not going to have any kind of shadow. They won't look like they're receding. They'll just look like they're sitting on top of his head. So just a touch there. And I'm going to make that a little bit lighter also. Yeah, with the noses, I tried to decide, okay, do I kind of give them the dark nose sort of thing, or what should I do there? I think each face might be a little bit different, so I may have to just decide that individually on each one. Here, we need some on his hand over here. Going to get a little bit of that on these straps, which have a little less coverage. There's not so much stuff over the top of them as there was on the other guy. He had one extra pack and a few other items that covered that, more of a pouch on his belt. So yeah, I need to add a little bit of light here. And the depreciating that we did on the gun, so now that's starting to look darker. Everything else behind it gets a little bit lighter. So we'll go a little bit lighter here with a few of our greens. And if I need, then just grab a little water, make that flow. I know some of you folks swear by flow improver and those other things and the different mediums. And if you want to use that instead, no problem. Why not? You got it. Use it. I used to use it myself. I think I probably used the Reaper flow improver a lot way back in the day. And by way back in the day, that's 2013, 2014, probably into 2015. To me, that seems almost like a bazillion years ago. It's really not that long ago. Alright. And I still got my blue liner up here. What am I going to do? I'm going to take a little bit of that blue off-white here. It's been sitting around. Here, there we go. So now we've got a darker blue here. The idea is just get myself a bit of a bluish gray on the hooves. It separates them a little bit because everything on the ground is just, it's shades tan and brown. It's that warm we talked about. Remember, warm versus cool. And even though this is essentially darker than what's around it. Maybe you see it a little bit more easily because you're contrasting that cooler color with something that's brown, or brown, warm, whatever, tan. Here, I'm gonna try to do just a few of these. See, it's a little bit of a striation there. Let's do the same thing here. Now, if I was doing his gun in non-metallic, I'd be working on that right now. It's gonna be a little separate thing. Again, I want to use the metal medium for you because, well, I have to do them in metals because that's the assignment there. And a lot of you folks, you don't necessarily want to do the non-metallic stuff, and this is another option for you. And guess what I'm doing here? I got some of that blue. I'm throwing it right here into this pack. Look at that, just throwing blue in places you'd say, what in the world, there should not be blue there. Well, believe it or not, colors sort of spreads all over the place. You'd be surprised at what colors things really are if you were to almost just kind of take a picture of it or something and really look really hard at what colors things are. You would be surprised. Just look at cars as you're, well, not as you're driving, but if you're in the passenger seat, just look at cars and see how the environment around it changes, what that car looks like and what you think it should be. So just even, see touches of blue there. That's that grayish blue. Let's get some of those striations over here on this side of the hoof. And you go one more there, touch lighter there, and maybe, speaking of more of a brownish color, so I went into that more rusty type color that's there. And we're just gonna put that over the top, almost like he's, remember the mud effect? So we're cheating a little bit there. We're just gonna say, okay, he's got mud on the bottom of his hoof at least. Just do that. How does that sound? So what we're gonna do is call this it for the middle tone phase. And I think what we'll actually do next, because we want context here, I'm going to throw out, I got the blue liner there, we're going to get the metal medium out there, and we're going to fool around with some metals here, and then after the metals we'll get into some of those final details, the face, the tattoos, that sort of thing. So stay tuned for that. So we're going to play around with some of this. We've got the Vallejo metal medium. It's an interesting, let's just pick up a little blob of this and show you. See, it's reasonably thick right here. It's pretty darn thick. What I'm going to do is make the palette a whole bunch bigger, like so. Move it where you can see that metal medium there. Let's see, yeah, we got it moving around, and what we're going to do is take some of our, look at that, that's the blue liner mixed with it. And what I've just got now is a deep, deep, dark blue metal. I can see just a little bit of shininess to this. So this is, you want to do somewhat a Space Marine, but this is the advantage. Now, okay, you can still see it. What we're going to do is have some more of this metal medium here. Look at what happens when I add a little bit more. Look at this. That same color gets lighter and lighter and lighter. So here, let's move that camera there. And again, sorry for the lines. It's just kind of, there we go. That kills some of the lines. So see how it goes light to dark there? That's the neatest thing about the metal medium is that it also lightens your metals. So instead of having to go this gold to this brighter gold to mithril silver, however, whatever the colors are that you're using, you can basically make not just your own color of metal, but how light or dark it is. So now I don't want it to necessarily be quite so warm or cool. So blue, so that what that means is I'm going to grab me some brown liner over here, throw that back in there. So this is what I do for all of my bolt action guns when I want to get that blackened steel. And let's get right in here. And now what we've got is a really dark metal color. Really nice and dark. Look at that. How hard is it? It can be really hard to find a decent dark metal color. You can find metal colors all the time. Lots of the same silver, gold, bright silver, whatever. But how many bluish silvers are there? And watch what happens here when I take this and just go more with the brown liner. Get this where you can see it. See how that just starts to change? You can really do more shading with your metals instead of just applying paint with them. You don't usually shade as much with metals. You're always trying to take some kind of a wash or a glaze, put it over the top, which, well, that's great, except, well, A, you maybe need it to be a certain color, but every glaze you put on there, it kills your metal effect. So here I just got some of that blue back now. It's a little bit lighter. Look at this. See what we can do there. And now get rid of some of the extra, and you can thin it down too, because it's got plenty of paint in it now too. Let's see if we can. There we are. See that? Look what we just did. So we've kind of reversed things here. See, it's lighter up here, darker down here, lighter down here on this part of that magazine, that clip, sorry. What we're going to do is we're going to throw a little bit of light over here too. We can even do, I think it's called TMM, that's true metallic metals, I believe. And it's the same exact principles as non-metallic stuff. The way you're lighting it sort of from below. You're showing that reflected light. That's not something usually shown in a metal effect with actual metal things. So let's, yeah, we're going to hit the top of this here. And this is not even, I believe I can go even lighter than that, because here, let's get a little more of it here, because I haven't gone, once you go pure metal medium, that's as light as you can go. So you can only go as light as, this. That's as light as you can go. But I'm going to be using this on everything. I'll be showing you how to do it on Song of Ice and Fire figures. I'm going to be doing some Lord of the Rings figures with metals, because people have seen me do the non-metallic plenty of times, and you don't necessarily need to see the same non-metallic metal tutorial over and over again. It's handy when it's on maybe the army that you're trying to do at the time. But not everybody does metallic stuff. Not everybody does non-metallic. So I'm trying to create some fun tutorials for everybody. So see, that's got a lot more. Look at that. See, it has a little shimmer to it. See, we're catching that blue now. Turn it this way. Here, we're going to do a little bit of that. Take this and mix it with it's almost like a orange or yellow color here. It's a little bit of that sepia liner. so it's lighter. Here we get rid of some of the extra. It's where you can see it now, and look at what I'm doing. Just lightening this up down here. Leaving that dark up there. What am I going to do here? I'm going to actually throw a little bit of light on that edge. So again, that's something you just don't see a lot of. I even watered it down a touch. Look at that. And what I'm doing here is leaving actually that darker and that darker, because that's again, it's what I have to repeat to be able to match other things that have been done previously. I suppose it's an issue for everybody too, because you guys have to match your own armies. You know, what you've done before, you're going to have to do it again. And we talked about how much time it takes, but then there's that also, I guess, do you want to do it that many times again? Can you deal with repeating that over and over and over again? Is it just going to get too much of a hassle? So what we haven't done, we have not really messed at all with the just straight up metal medium. So let's hit that in a few spots and see what happens. It's a little dot right there. Just a bit, and that gives it a little touch of brightness there. I'll do the same thing here. Just in a few spots. Like so. Now this is a little more prominent on some of the other units, like the Tannenbergs. That's the series that's also underway. So I've got actually 2 series underway for Victoria. The Rausenberg, not the Rausen, but the Tannenbergs, those are already, like I said, I got episode 1 up there. Episode 2 is going to be coming really soon. This one, though, is for, it's more of a general audience type thing. If you want to see the rest of these and you're not already a patron, well, you can join in on that Army Painter pledge level, like the scroll on the bottom of the screen says. It's $15 a month, and it gets you the Army Painting series, of course, but it actually gets you even more. You get to see all the other tutorials that I make, all of them. And that gets to be a good 12 to 20 hours a month. So here, again, a little metal medium in with our dark color here. So now we're going completely in the opposite direction, but still with a metal color. There we go. Look at that. Look at the difference that makes. That's essentially a non-metallic technique right there. See how we got that reflected light? Look at that. But still with some color on it. So guess what? As you practice this, which you're more comfortable with, though, the metal stuff, you're learning non-metallic metal at the same time. That's not shabby. So you're essentially teaching yourself how to do non-metallic metal without having to really overthink it, because you're still in your comfort place of having the metals with you. And just a little darkness on the end of the barrel there. So okay, we'll call that it with the metals. Here, let's throw out some green again. Do that. Let's add some more light colors here. Let's throw some of the maiden flesh out here. Oh, what else do we got? Let's see if we can get some of the orange rust out there. Bang. We'll even throw a little bit of the, is it red rust? It is. Right there. So while we have some of that darker color and some of our red rust, let's see what we can do in terms of, well, weathering this armor a bit. So you can see I'm making that a little more reddish. Gonna go over here. And right in there. Look what I'm gonna do. Does a couple of things. First, it's gonna basically weather that and provides a little bit of rusting on there. What else does it do? You also now have, see, this starts to stand out more. So you've kind of added a dark here. You've made something have more than just weathering. You've also given it some shading. That's an exciting possibility there. Let's see if there's any more areas for this, because again, this, you can see how dark that is. And I also want to hit those straps, because remember we said the straps were about the same as the rust color. Go in there with that, just like I did on the shoulder armor. I'm going to go like this. Look at that. So that brings some of that out. Let's say you want to go crazy and do a rust streak like that. That's what the secret weapon things are really good for. They're designed to be used in this semi-transparent way. They still cover reasonably well, but the idea is you thin them down a touch. You can use them in this manner. So here we go. We're going to do that streak thing again. So it just took so little effort, so little time, but what it adds is very valuable. Let's throw a little more here on these straps. Maybe I'll even go some parts of the hair. I didn't like what I had there. I'm going to change it because I can do that. Now let's also hit this stock right here that's right up against his arm. That needs that. And I'm going to get a little bit of that same rust color around his eyes, so it's, I don't want to call it eyeliner, but it's going to make the eyes stand out a touch more. So that's good. Got that maiden flesh out there. I want to find, there we go, something that's reasonably close to a white. What we'll do is we'll go about that far with it, and we have to leave some ash on the end. There's his eye. So this is where we start to maybe think about throwing in a few. See, look at the difference that makes. And here, once we hit this, that's going to also stand out too. And we've got his chompers there. Now, I don't want to give him lipstick. You know, sometimes you see the purple around the lips. We won't quite do that. I'm going to add a little brown there. Let's see what happens when we go with something that's a little lighter here. So this is almost closer to, say, a regular skin tone for a regular person. And yes, I use the weathering paints a lot for regular skin tones, just for that purpose. See what we do? We highlight under there just a touch. Maybe on his nose here. And let's get these knuckles there. A few other bits here. Go back to these spats once again. And all the while, look at all of the nifty shading we're doing. We have not touched white whatsoever. Hasn't even been out on the palette. I'm not even sure if I am going to put it out on the palette. Now here, this is actually almost as bright and as orangey as we've gone so far. So I'm going to take some of that away. And what am I doing? I'm stippling some of that in because, well, maybe it indicates that there's a little bit of hairiness to that. It's not just straight up pure skin. 'Cause heck, even I'm almost hairier than this Beastman, practically. So, yeah, my skin would definitely not be so smooth. It'd be a little more mottled. Let's get a little more highlight action going on some of these recesses here on the spats. And all of this, once you're starting to get to this area, and we'll really talk about this more when we get to the rest of the unit, you do things with your army instead of trying to do it all at once. One gigantic chunk, and you don't play with it at all until it's painted. Well, what I'm hopefully going to be able to show you, like I do with every army painter thing, is, you know what, by the end of that first stage, it looks, at least it's got some paint, it's got some shading, and you can at least use it. Try it out. Maybe you're going to add some units to it, maybe take some out. Maybe say, well, yeah, that 20-man squad of conscripts, that I'm just going to go with 10 or 15 or whatever it is, something smaller. Then you do the next stage. And then you can do a little bit more, and they're that much closer to done, you play again. So that is, I think, the last 2 or 3 series I've really mentioned that a lot. And the last couple of series before this, so you had a Lord of the Rings, it was Army of the Dead, you had the shiny Lannisters, I also got the Night's Watch from Song of Ice and Fire, and that's, in some ways it's a little bit more like this, where everything is more muted colors, shades of gray. They're supposed to be black after all, but on none of them did we use black. Just like here, we didn't really sit down and grab a brown and use that. We tried to vary it as much as possible. Alright, let's hit his eyes here. Let's do that maybe. Yeah, I can use that brush. I mentioned I've got the Series 7 type brushes, so I've got them. Let's break one of these out. Do we have any liner painter left? If I don't, I'm going to throw some out here. So here's my brown liner again. Like so. Just like this. Get a little bit of that going. And let's see if we can make him some eyes where you can see it and I can see it. So this is the upper lid there. I'm going to take away some of the extra paint. Now I have to decide which way do we want him to look. We're going to have him sort of looking straight this way instead of this way or off to the side. We're having him look more straight on. Alright, I think you can see that. I gotta give it a little twist here so I can, and I'm trying to get the eye right here. You can see I try to connect it to the eye lid, the upper eyelid. You want him just floating, because he's going to have a really surprised look on his face if you do that. And the more connected that is, almost the more angrier the look is, meaner the look is. So we're darkening down a little bit of that. Barrel there. So I'm going to throw and mix some of that brown liner in with that red rust to make it even darker. Just need a little more separation here. I'm going to do the same here. Separate out a few other details, same way, same idea. And I know, oh gosh, I hate that term of blacklining or whatever that is. Really hate that, because it's not, it's a color. We've given this a color. Speaking of colors, we've got that orangey brown, dark brown going on. What do we want to do? A little bit of this chipping type stuff. See that? Just focusing on that edge, and don't overdo it like crazy, because sometimes more is less. Do it along that edge. We'll find some places here. Now you could even put like a little squad number on this armor. So I might maybe on a special weapon. On mine, I would probably on a special weapon, or I would just give it a squad number. If I had 4 units of these, well, I'd probably try and designate one unit from the next. Either put a number on these shoulder pad things, a number here. Those little small details, be surprised at what they can add. But what we're doing here is we're going to glaze a little more dark down in there. Just needs it. Same thing here. Sometimes you just say, okay, yeah, I need a little more dark here and there. It's not always just highlighting things. Sometimes you need to darken them down, like here. That's what we're going to do along here too, on these horns, just a bit. And maybe a few spots on the rifle here, like so. And like that. We need some darks in there, so we're going to put some darks in there. And again, it's not black lining. We're glazing this stuff in. That's why we're adding a little bit of water here to make this flow. That's all it takes. And what we'll do in one of our last painting steps, we'll get some of that fluorescent paint out. We'll maybe fool around with some of these tattoos here, okay? And then we'll maybe mess around with that fluorescent paint to make his cigarette have a little bit of glow. So we're just starting now to work on those extra little elements, and these are the things. And what we'll do is at the end of it, we'll see, well, how long did that take? And we'll say, okay, is that something that you might want to do on your whole army? Is that too much time? So we'll see what happens. So stay tuned for those little final details next. We've got some final things to add here to our Broolian Beastman. One of those is going to be right here. Another Vallejo thing, and see how wild that's driving the camera right there? Look at that. The camera's just bouncing around on this. That's how intense this is. It's the fluorescent orange. They make several colors. There's magenta, green, blue, yellow, and I have lots of other tutorials. Again, Patreon page has tons of those. See how thick that is? That's something that can be a little bit hard for people to get used to. It's super transparent, but it's super thick. And what we're going to do is we're going to take some of that. We're going to throw it over the top of our cigarette right here. And that is going to be really intense. We're also going to take some of that. We're going to give ourselves a little bit of maybe a pointer light right here. A bit of a targeting light. And we can even take some of the metal medium here, mix it with it, believe it or not, so that I can actually paint a tiny bit of orange glow onto that. Now again, the camera sometimes it sort of bounces off of that, but it's actually, yeah, it is actually fluorescent orange metal now at that point. And if you really want to give it a little bit of extra brightness, I've got some clear yellow here. The clear paints go really nicely with the liner paints, actually. Not the liner, well, they go nice with the liner paints too, but they're really nice with these fluorescents. So what we're going to do is mix these together. It lightens it up. And throw that on there. So now he's got that much more of a glow on his cigarette there. Same thing with our little, with the laser sighting here. Again, I'm going to have to mix some of that metal medium with it. I found that out the hard way. And if you don't do that, it's not going to look like a laser sight or like a reflected light. It's going to just look more like a yellow safety tape or something. And we'll just one last little poof on his cigarette. That's all we needed. Nothing super complicated. But we've also got our blue liner paint out here, and we wanted to mess around with some tattoos. So just kind of giving it that generic blue ink look. I threw in a little bit of the red rust just to make it a little less blue. So we can see if we can do some easy, try to do the skull there, and it's not super complex. All we're going to do, not even going to worry about the eye socket yet, because who knows, maybe you make those flaming or something like that, yellow. Maybe you have some swords crossed behind the skull, whatever. It's all up to you. We can make this as big or as small as we want. You could put some kind of imperial Aquila type wings behind it. So now we're going to go with more of the ram's head. All it is just like a certain team's logo. So we've got the curved horns here. And then we'll do just like on his horns, we're going to do these little ridges like this. But then the ram's head, which we're going to suggest here, that's kind of his beard there. That goes off down into the crevice there created by the muscles. We do that because, well, it's a way to have a suggestion of something there, but without having to spend an hour doing each freaking tattoo. So that's one of these ways where you get a little more out of less. Now we still have that red rust out here. We got a little bit of the, I'm going to touch of yellow there. And now we needed those eye sockets in there. There's one, there's two, and there's a hole where the nose should be. And if this is too dark, I said, you know what, I'm going to add a little dark or a little more mid-tone in here. So I watered it down because I need it lighter to show off that tattoo. So these are those adjustments sometimes that you got to make. So now you've got yourself your little skull right there. Go over here to our ram's head and start to clean that up a little bit. Another thing that I would do sometimes with tattoos is actually take a color that's a lot like the skin tone underneath the tattoo and just sort of glaze it over the top. See what I'm doing there? I'm taking away some of the starkness of that line. It's almost like it's supposed to be under the skin, not sitting on top. But maybe it's a little more faded. And while I've got my yellow out here and some of the maiden flash, what I'm going to do is see if I can't throw some brighter highlights on things like his tusks. Maybe here on the head, we really want to focus some lights there for obvious reasons. Here, let's drop a few of these on the finger here. You know, at this stage here, see I'm sort of, again, scumbling that on there. You can almost think of it as like you're stippling on some hair. I'll add a little more light to the shoulder end. So this one here, his skin tone is definitely different than the first example, and that's, you're going to see even more of that when it comes time for the rest of the unit. There will definitely be even more difference between them. Some might be more reddish. Some might even be a little bit darker, almost more like a dark brown. I think when we used to do Blood Bowl teams and they had stuff like Beastmen in them or whatever, we did each Beastman a very different color. Because, well, goats are not all the same color. There's lots of different colors of goats. All right. And we can throw some other highlights in other places. Like so. Let's get a few here. I'm going to get some of the maggot white back out here. Like this. I'm going to try and hit the tops of these horns right here. Because now you'll see how what we thought were bright highlights were actually not highlights. That's that notion of middle tones again. See how they fade down as we go through each of these ridges here. There's a little less, a little less, a little less. We're going to take this and hit the top of the cigarette just there. This pack here, I'll hit that too. Because I looked at the original one again and there were some definite lights here, highlights there that were pretty bright. And like I said before, maybe this is where you take this color here and you do a little symbol on there or something. You could even throw a skull on here. And that's even barely even noticeable there. So I'm just gonna Throw out a few little highlights here while I've got this going. Along the handle. And then, oh, good. Still got some green out here. What are we going to do? We'll just go one dot for that socket. So now we just added a quick little skull right there. Don't want to make it super noticeable. It's just there. And you can put stripe down there. There's any kind of number of little design elements you could throw in there if you want. So a little white there on that tusk. I want to go back to the yellow over here. Just trying to get a little more, again, shape on that face. Maybe we'll throw a little touch of almost yellowish green here. Right along that. Just the tiniest amount, not a lot. Let's get a little more of our yellow here. So this, what we did here, this entire thing with the, now it'll probably take you longer if you're doing it for the first time, but your tattoos, this, the extra highlighting, little skull here. We've been at this about 10, 13 minutes or so. So again, if you feel that you can handle that and want to do that 40, 50, 60 times, however many times it takes to get through your whole army, well then have at it. Let's say all you do is just maybe one of those tattoos, and now it cuts down that time in half. And you say, okay, yeah, I can add 5 minutes a guy. Maybe you just say, okay, you know what, I can't do any of that stuff. It's just going to add too much time to the army, then you don't do it. But you do all the other things. Speaking of other things, here's the, well, yeah, we're going to wait. No, let's do it now. What the heck, let's just talk about it. Because I'm just going to throw one of these on. Now, you can see I've got a little static grass clump right there. Well, these are ones that I made myself. And this is a tutorial that I want to try and do. I really need a different filming station than this though. I'm trying to assemble that. Basically, I've got the more affordable parts, but I need to get basically another one of these machines, another computer to be able to do that in the form of a laptop, because this gets real messy. Static that is used to get these things to stand up straight kind of gets the grass all over the place, and this does not have the space for it. Here's the nifty thing about being able to use your own tufts. Look at this. I've made shrub tufts and flower tufts. And just what you're looking at here is probably a good, if you were to have to buy these things, I don't know, $30, $40 worth of tufts, whatever. Did not cost me, when you take in all of the materials together, it's pretty much less than what I would have spent if I just had to buy those tufts separately. So what we're going to do is we're going to find a couple of tufts here. I'm going to throw one in here. And see if we can't get another one over here somewhere. Alright, this is where I got my pins. I've got some glue there. So let's find a few small ones. Maybe this one, maybe one of these. Okay, throw down the glue first. Right here. A dot of glue there. Let's get one of these smaller ones. Alright, and just like I would with any store-bought tuft, what am I going to do? I'm going to try and shove that down in here. Right there. This is where the pins are handy. Because I'm not smashing the tuft with my hand. The pin can go all the way down into the recesses of the tuft, and it's just standing there like it's supposed to be, not smushed. And then we're gonna find another one over here. So when I do my sand and gravel and all that other kind of stuff, I make sure that I've left room and open space for, well, a grass tuft. And here is yet another one, and that's gonna go over here. So what I'm going to do is tamp down some of these edges. Like that. So we've got our 2 grass tufts on there. I don't want to cover this whole thing in grass tufts, but again, it's a tutorial that I'm hoping at some point to be able to film for you guys. I do have some blog posts on it, just with some step-by-step things, some pictures. But I know if a picture is 1,000 words, sometimes video with words is a whole bunch of pictures. And there's the final little thing. Now this is the color I've been using for that rim there. I just want you to see what it looks like with that. So this is just like a Vallejo. It's one of the Panzer series. And just throw some of that out there. And we'll just grab our brush here and get that edge painted up. And now we have done a reasonable job of matching our initial little sample figure. So there you go. We have, now this one has a little less of the purples in the face. He has a little more green in the face and yellowish green than this one. So once again, I hope you enjoyed this, and if you do and you're not already on the Patreon page there, well, you can again sign up. It's just jameswappel.patreon.com. If you're already patrons, well, you're really familiar with series like this. You've been enjoying these for a while now, for several months, and we're just going to keep cranking away at those. So thanks again, and I will catch you on episode 2.